Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Yield Foundry. I'm going to be starting on this experiment, ramming it up. And what my first part's going to be is to make a nice flat surface that the shaft and pattern of the nut or crossfeed nut, I can shove it down inside. Now if I wanted to, I could go ahead and just do all the other stuff I did in other videos, like build up the side halfway, cut it down, and then do it the same way in the cope as the drag. But this time I'm going to show you another way of doing it. All right. As always, you scratch the surface between the layers so that the layers can bond to each other. Strike this off. As I've said before, your best striking tool, your millions of striking tools out there, some of them more effective than others. I find getting a piece of angle iron, thin stuff, not thick stuff, you can use it to strike it off. Have a little bit of a dip in here, and I don't want that to be there. Okay, we're not doing that any good. So and that's better. Before this stuff dries out, have to reclaim it, put it in the barrel so it can be used. That's the only bad thing about green sand, is that if you want to try and use it effectively, you try and reclaim it before it gets all dried out. Otherwise, you limit the amount of sand that you can use and that the sand gets put someplace so that it can be added to the sand you're going to be using to recondition. You know, after you pour the molds and it's all dried out, as dry as a bone. So you just take the time to get it. I mean, look at all that. That can be used for quite a bit of square inches. It's a pain in the butt, and something we didn't have to do while using Petrobond, because that stuff, you know, it can be out in the open and almost never dry out. Okay, now what I was talking about before is that you press it into this. Okay, I mean, you can't just press like that because this is nice and hard, right? And you'll notice that I put tape over the threads. Not so much I'm worried about the threads getting damaged as is I don't want to have to contend with you know, all the sand that would get in between the threads. You know, it's not going to stay there because this is not up and down. You know, you can't pull it up and then have the threads be there, because it'll all be pulled apart and bunch of junk stuck in it. So I really don't care to have that problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push it down, you know, tap it down into the sand here, and halfway, so half of it's in the drag, half of it's in the cope. Of course, you're estimating if you're halfway or not. And I believe I'm about halfway right there. Okay. See now how easy that was. Let's do a little smoothing. All right. Yeah, that's what I thought. Of course, these were made by me and none of them were standardized size. I got close. I didn't get it right on. So I'm just going to have to be careful when I lift this up that I put it down the right way, which should be just easy. I mean, should be fairly easy. Okay, there it is. Yeah, we got just enough. This is my blind riser, by the way. Okay, and no, I'll cut that. Okay, I was thinking of pushing this down also, just like I did this, but I'll just cut that. Now I need to make some marks on there where the the sprue is going to be placed. Cut, I mean. We have the in gate, we have right about there. Doesn't need to be very far. Now this one I will have to put some partine powder in there, just so that it makes it easier for me to pull these out. And it really doesn't need to be, well, I guess I will. Makes not that much difference, because I'm not really making a casting that's anybody I'm going to use. I'm just going to do an experiment, but might as well stay in the habit of making things smoother. Now, there are different ways. I just tend to do my fingers through here and you know, make it go through the screen and go down onto the surface. There's other way. There's another way that was taught, and here's a reason why you got to watch out doing that, is because there was a piece of aluminum from the pour in there. And a lot of those have points on them. So you can do it like this too, but as you can see, very little bit falls through when you're almost out. So I'm just gonna that surprised me even. But don't be surprised, as long as I'm using a pneumatic rammer, the air is going to turn on periodically. Ready. So I guess I'll do right there. Right, there you are. Okay. Don't really want to do it too deep because this isn't a very thick coat. I was pleasantly surprised that this was pressed into the sand as easily as it was, because sometimes when you rub it, ram it up with a rammer, with a hand rammer, or rather with a pneumatic rammer, sometimes it's a little hard to get it to press in to the sand. Maybe the molding god is on my side today. We'll find out. Dope. Now we get this now all I'm using this for this time, so I use now principally you use the parting powder to put a dusting between two pieces of sand, you know, two layers of sand, so that the sand, being somewhat sticky, doesn't stick to whatever it is you're dusting. What I'm doing this time is trying to use it as a smoothing agent. It makes it smoother. Doesn't allow the tools I'm using to rip the sand, you know, like you can see how that ripped sand off right there. This partine powder will keep the sand from being ripped out of the rest of the sand because of its stickiness. And the stickiness is what you want, because you want all the sand to stick together and make a nice solid mold. However, we don't want it at some times. Hey, that sounds like my wife just came home from work. That, or somebody with a car has pulled up to try and burglarize me. I don't know. trying to remove all the sharp edges of the sand right now, so that when the metal flows, it won't rip the sand loose and put it in the mold cavity. Okay. Now, don't forget to vent. Well, she hasn't immediately come out here to see if I'm alive. Okay, let's see if I can what I'm trying to do right now is I'm trying to give the pattern that I have in there some room to pull. Not terrible. Don't know where. Oh, here we go. I knew I had it around here somewhere. Okay. Where'd it go? Oh, there it is. Anyway, see, a little bit of it broke up, but you know, I didn't make this in such a way as to give it draft, okay, where it'll come out nice and neatly. But then you saw before, when I had this stuff fall out before, you just grind it off. Now it's, of course, the goal to have it come out nice and neatly, that is, but it's not the end of the world if it doesn't. And then right now I'm taking all the sharp edges off. there this is. Now for those guys, I'm way over here, aren't I? You can't see me, or can you? Well, I will aim the camera towards me a little bit better. For the time being. Anyway, here's the blind riser. Okay, here's the wrapping tool that I made and sent for a couple of the people I knew needed it. See how you wrap it all the way around and pull it out. Now in this case, I need to give myself a little more, no, that's over there. Okay, well I still need to get some of this stuff out of the way. When you have a riser in contact, or you want to have it feed a thick part of your casting so that you don't have any shrinkages, you've got to get rid of the sand that's in between the riser and the casting. Okay. And this time I'm going to make a top gate. It's just as easy to do at a top gate. And wait a minute, I didn't get it all out. Wait a minute, I'm going to cut. What the heck? I'm going to be cutting the sand. Why do I care about sand that's in there right now? Okay. Okay, cope is done. Now for the drag. Okay, that ought to do. You see how it will make things smoother by using the fillet irons. Now this isn't a molder's tool, by the way. It's a pattern maker's tool. They use this to smooth a fillet on a pattern. If you have two, I better turn you around, huh? Just happened to notice that he still were pointing more or less the other way. Okay, I think we're better. Probably still saw me, but anyway, for a pattern maker, you got a piece of wood, you got a piece of wood. You're making an angle right there. Well, it's bad in a molding sense that you have this fully 90-degree angle here, because you're going to have a crack form right where the 90-degree angle is when you got you know, the casting is shrinking, you know, contracting through solidification. So they put what's called a fillet in there to lessen that angle, and the part that the fillet will make a kind of a miniature riser. And that miniature riser will fill in what little bit of crack you might have gotten if you hadn't had it in there. The fillet, that is. Okay. So we will have, where is it? There it is. Now you know what you could do is, if you wanted to, you could just leave this like that, because the bottom half of this is going to solidify. This is going to solidify first because it's the thinnest portion. All the way from here, all the way around to the same place on the other side of this rod. That's all the thinnest part, and that'll solidify before this stuff will. Now in this area, the bottom will solidify first and work its way up to the top. You see that this is connected to the top, and this will be, because it's the last hot, you know, it'll be filled up last, and it'll have the hottest metal. Once this solidifies up and goes that way, this will be feeding it all the time. Okay, then this will be solid. Then this can be cut off by a saw, and the rest of this cleaned up with your other tools, just to make it look nice. Now the reason why I put this tape here was simply for the you know, the process of putting it into the sand. There ain't no reason for me to have the threads showing, and every reason for not to. If I just pushed it in, then I pull it out, I'll have some pieces of sand nice and solid in here forming these threads, but the most of it won't. Okay, most of it will just stay inside these threads. Okay, then I'd have to clean that up to be able to put this in. I'm just saving myself a little bit of trouble, or a little bit of time. Now though, what I'm going to do is, instead of just leaving that like that is, I'm going to come down to the bottom of the casting, or the pattern, and give the riser more capability of pouring, or rather feeding down all the way down. Okay, we already have a ingate formed over there. Let me make sure. Okay, where's the straight edge? Oh, well, that's a straight edge. I want to make sure that I've got this yeah, that'll be long enough. Don't need to go very far. Okay, now let's smooth out the bottom half that drags runner, in other words. Okay, now you see that I'm not good enough. The splash basin down here isn't deep enough. Okay, the splash basin is supposed to be twice as deep as this, so that the turbulence can be contained, and once the turbulence, it'll fill up, and by the time it fills up and goes into here, the turbulence will have stopped, and then it'll be all pushed out. Any of the dross that might have been formed will be pushed to the end of this, and then it fills up all the way and then goes in the ingate. Okay. I am still a little bit concerned about how well I made it's good. I keep getting paranoid about how far away this is from that. Did this go, did the in-gate runner, is that long enough, and does it's all right. But this needs to be quite a bit deeper. So we'll just use a good old double ender and deepen it. Yep, that's going to be all right. Okay. Let's get this out. Clean this. Okay, now this is not only my vent hole maker, it's my draw spike. When you draw this out, use your wrapping tool to easily put it in the wood. Don't forget, when you're using it, you don't just do it this way, then this way, because that's not the only dimensions that you're working with. You go all the way around 360 degrees. Okay, now see, you may see this is the stuff that I just dug in, and it's, let's say, 1/4 of an inch away from the bottom of that. Now, one of the good things about being that far away is that it tells you exactly where the bottom of that is, so that later on when you have it in the vise and you're sawing it off, you don't saw deep into the casting itself. Okay, so that's that. Now I need to take off all this tape, but I'm not gonna have you sit there and watch me take tape off. So I'll bring you back as soon as I'm done. Okay, that's just about ready, and the cope is ready. Now what I need to do, that was something I found out recently I didn't know. Now when we made our mold washes, we made them to, if this was the pattern itself, or the mold cavity itself, we would make mold washes that we would paint them like that, and this is now, this being the surface of the sand, is now smoother because of this going in between, filling in the gaps of the sand that we can't really see that well. And I found out that this dry graphite lubricant that Blaster makes, and here it is, and this is what we get, that I get that in the Home Depot. Okay, this is exactly the same mixture as of what we made for mold washes. Really cool. Anyway, now it's time to put the barrier on the screw. And I'm going to do it down here. Now we really don't have to worry about past the place where the pattern was, but just for kick's sake, I'm going to do it that way, because the odds are probably very good that the metal, when I pour it, is going to be hot enough because you see this is smooth and this is threads, and that means there's a gap in here that the metal can flow. Now even if it does flow, it doesn't make any difference because it's not going to attach to that, and all I'll have to do is just peel it back out of the threads, which might not be the easiest thing, but it's going to be not a bad process. Now this stuff dries out pretty quick. And I got to remember, I've got to do both sides of the threads. So that none of the metal has the least bit chance of attaching itself. Okay, I may as well do this. See, this is thin enough where it can fill in all the gaps between the grains of sand, but it's not so thick as to become a hazardous agent for my sand. I'll never know it's there once we mix all this stuff up. I'll be over here just for a second to give this the cope a bit of a spray. Now those, principally you would put a graphite, you know, wash on things that are going to be very, very hot, like Monel. Or even if you're trying to pour something that's thin, but it's made of brass and bronze, where you have to bring the temperature up to 2100, let's say, degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, now don't forget to write this down. Aluminum's pouring range is 1250 degrees to 1400 degrees. Always the lower temperature is for thicker castings. Okay, the pouring range for brass and bronze is 1950 degrees Fahrenheit at its coldest for the thickest you know, castings, to 2100 degrees for the thinnest casting. You know, and then it's going to be hot. Now Monel is closer to pouring it at almost steel. Okay, so it would really, I mean, Monel is really heavy along with very hot, so you would want to put a mold wash on there just for erosion's sake, so that when it's pouring, it's pouring and running through your gating system, that it doesn't just reach down and grip the sand and take some of it with it. Okay, if you pour, or rather if you put a mold wash on it, it'll act as almost like a ceramic barrier. Not quite as hard as a ceramic barrier, but it'll act as a barrier, and it'll be a lot less likely that any of the Monel would grip the sand. That the Monel would grip the sand and tear up your mold cavity. I don't know why I didn't pull that before, because I'm practically done with what I'm doing with the LP Air. Anyway, so that is solidified. Now, is this going to be good enough? Let's give it another shot. Just one coating would do well, but I'm going to give it another shot so that it can have a little more thickness to the coating and give myself a little more bearing, or rather a little more gap in between the female and the male threads. Okay. Because I can't see how thick it is, that's about as good as that's going to get. See if I can just sit this over here, let it dry out. I'll bring this back this way. Oh, we gotta let it dry out first. Okay. I don't have it all sprayed. I got a little bit in the corner here. Okay. Anyway, this is a godsend if it acts just like the stuff we made in the foundry. We make our own mold wash and core wash. It'll be nice if this works like it should. Okay. Oh, still wet. I'll leave it be. Okay, so here's what's going to happen next. So you're not going to miss anything. What I'm going to do is I'm going to let this dry out. Once it's dry, I'm going to pick it up and put it where it needs to be, right in here. I'm going to get the cope, arrange it the right way, put that on top, and then that mold will be ready to be poured. I don't know, I might make some other molds and I might not. Probably not. I think I'll just concentrate on this experiment. I'm like a mad scientist experiment. Okay, so once I get up to the point where it's going to be semi entertaining for you, I'll bring you back. Okay, bye-bye. Hey, welcome back to the Ye Olde Foundry. This is the next day. I have everything set up. Fire's going. Everything's in place. And it takes about a half an hour on average for that to melt down. Once that's melted down and I test its temp to see if it's a good temp, then I'll go ahead and bring you back. Okay? See you in a little bit. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to turn everything off and pour it. So, we'll do that. Okay, well, we didn't have any leaks, and it seemed like it took a little bit of aluminum, so it couldn't have cold shut on me. You know, I don't care how long you're in the business, you always worry about that stuff. Okay, so as soon as it gets cool enough to break out, I'll bring you guys back. Okie dokie. It's been about 15 minutes since I poured it. That should be plenty cool enough to be able to just open it. Oh, it's over here. Okay. Well, it looks good so far. Everything was lined up just fine. I don't don't see any shrink in the aluminum on the top of the riser. There's a little bit of shrinkage here and here. I don't see any shrinkage anywhere else either. So I'll go ahead and set this up like this and let it cool down to where I can touch it with my hands. It looks pretty good. I thought that maybe it might run into these threads a lot more, but it didn't, thankfully. Okay, so it's just a matter of me cleaning up now. Trying to put tools and all that stuff away, and then I'll bring you guys back. Okay, it is all cool and all that. While you were off, I took the bandsaw and chopped off all the excess. Here's the what the blind riser looks like when it's being used. No shrinkages in there, so it well, there's a slight, you can tell right where the cracker core is. This is called a cracker core right here. It's made from green sand. You know, you ram it up, you know, but it still acts as a core. There is a slight cracking right at the very bottom of the crease, but that's the only thing I can see. There's slight shrinkage there, but that's the only visible stuff that I see. Okay, here's the big test. Will this move? I'm not using the best gripper, but we'll see if it moves. Well, the whole screw moved. I don't think that's going to help me. So I think I'll go ahead and put it this way. It can grip it easier that way. Then I'll get my pipe wrench. I'm not going to be using that thread or shaft for anything. If this is as tight as I think it's going to be, I'm probably going to have to get some of that nut buster to get some lubricant in there. But we'll see. I mean, it should be very, very little clearances in there. Yep, I'm going to put some the penetrating oil in there and let it soak. Okay, well, this is going to be about a 10-minute wait or thereabouts. I'll bring you back when I'm done waiting. Okay, it's been 10 minutes. Now it's time to start putting some force on this. Actually, I don't want to do it that way because I'll be scrunching in on the threads here too. So let's do it this way. Thankfully, I'm not going to be using this for any real project because I'm digging the hell out of it. Hey, look at this, it's moving. Now, as I said before, this is probably going to be way too much. What do you call, grip for anybody who's got to try and operate the new nut with just a little handle. So the odds are very good that you're going to have to do some lapping, just giving yourself a little more clearance so that it's not hard and it's moving a little easier now. The graphite must be accumulating on the threads in here. Now, to me, this is a success on the experiment. But what I need to do is I need to look on the inside of this and see if the molten aluminum flowed into all the threads and made an entire female correspondent to the male threads. Hey, can do it by hand. Well, it's almost out. Now, if I was to do this again, I would make sure that I used something a little thicker than the carbon or the graphite. Okay, let's see if I can get this off and maybe I'll be able to see a little bit easier. let's see if I can blow this thing out. I got a, let's see if I have any air. Nope. Well, I'm going to do some more chopping and then blow this thing out so I can see how good it went. Okay, so I'll bring you back when I get that done. Okay, I've got it, most of the stuff all chopped up. I don't have to really dress it up real nice because I'm not going to be using it for anything. But the last part is just to take off the excess out here with the deburring tool so we can look in there a little easier. Okay, let me see if I can blow this out a little bit. Okay, well, as with almost any experiment, there's a good news and bad news component to this. The good news is that number one, it didn't fuse, didn't even come close to fusing with a screw, or I guess it's a screw, it's a threaded screw. And for at least a third of the threads were filled in all the way, and that was the part that filled in all the way. Here's, let's see, how would I tell if which is top and which is bottom? All right, let's assume this is top, this is bottom. If I was to estimate, I would say a good 1/3 of this filled in all the way into the threads. But because when it started pouring into here, this sucked all the heat out, the rest of it is only 1/2 to about 1/2. It only penetrated about halfway in. Okay, simple, fix to that. You just pour the metal hotter. Okay. And look at this. Comes on by hand. Let's see if I can clean out those threads a little better. There is no movement whatsoever, and you can move it by hand. So, if you can move it by hand, let me see this. Let's see something here. If you can move it by hand, that's pretty good. But let's say there's a wheel out here, you're moving it, and I tell you, this is tight enough where it's not going to be bad if you have a wheel out here. Of course, it all depends on you. It all depends on what you like. This is nice and tight. It's not going to go back and forth at all. You don't have to worry about compensating for backlash. At least right now you don't. And should work very fine for anybody who has both lathes and furnace and everything you need to cast this, like I showed you. And just a little bit of if you don't like it as tight as that, just a little bit of compound, lapping compound that is, just a little bit of lapping compound, and you'll have the clearances that you want. All right, I'm pleased. I mean, I wish all of the threads had filled in all of the way, but I know how to fix that if I ever was to have to. You just do like I did. Make sure that you have the riser right on this. Okay, as I was saying before the stupid battery died, don't give yourself a neck between the side of your casting and the riser. Okay, have it. Well, I had this half in the cope and half in the drag. All right. If it was like that, have it right up against. Okay. Then when you pull everything out, you're going to have a little bit of sand in here. You just, like I showed you, you just dust that out. Just remove that stuff. You know, take the curved edges and smooth them out, and then have a kind of a ramp going down to the bottom of this. That way, if there's any shrinkage in here, this will feed it. Okay, it'll have a ramp going down to it, and but usually when these are, you know, solidifying, down here is where it starts solidifying because it's all surrounded by the sand. Okay, you'll have an open spot right up here where this is attached, and this is the last thing that gets filled, so it's the hottest metal. All right, so this will be solidifying and drawing. When it solidifies, it'll go from this area to this way, and once it starts getting close to this, it'll start drawing molten metal out of here and filling it up in here. Okay, that's what a riser's for. In this case, you would want to have the riser, because when you pour something like this, now that I know, I'm going to have to pour it maximum heat. I poured this at 1300 degrees, but the mitigating circumstance here was the thing that made it not go as perfectly as I wanted. This chill, it acted like a chill. This metal acted like a chill, and it made it freeze, the molten metal freeze, before it reached all the way into the depth of that thread. Okay, and that's what you can see here. I don't know if I can show it to you well. Let's see if I can get out in the light out here and see. Gonna get in there, and I wish I could see better. All right, there's the area that got in there the best. Okay, you still have about 1/3 of a thread right in here, and that's only that way because the iron froze that, and you can tell it froze it because if you look at the edges of the threads, they're rounded. Okay, I sure hope this is able to be seen something. Anyway, so that's the end of the experiment. I think it's a successful experiment because I know how to solve what went wrong easily. You just pour hotter metal and it'll go in faster, and it won't freeze up as quick. And I'm being attacked by gnats. So if you have a nice foundry setup and you need to replace the nut on your Crossfeed, or actually any other nut really, on your lathe, now you know how to do it. Okay, and please pass the word to everybody about the channel here. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. I think you'll learn a lot. I think you'll get a lot of good knowledge out of this. If you don't know anything already, please start at the beginning chapters, because when I started beginning all this, I gave all the basic information, all the the easiest stuff, the stuff you would teach, you know, a high school student first, not necessarily an adult. But see, if you're an adult and you haven't been exposed to any of this, you're basically in the same group as the high school student, right? So start at the beginning, start at video 1, the oldest video, and work your way towards the newest video. And you'll have a very good foundation of knowledge before you even start any of this. All right? Be really nice if you had woodworking skills, then you may be able to make your own patterns too. Okay? So, but if you make your own patterns, don't forget to you know, account for shrinkage. All right? Just look up on the internet, because I don't have my book right with me. Look up on the internet shrinkage allowances for metal, and you should be able to find it. Okay, all the, you know, basic metals, brass, bronze, aluminum, steel, iron will be covered. The oddball alloys that you might come across, you'll have to experiment about that to see if it's the right, and then you just put it in your notebook. Okay, so to all you Navy, both active and retired, Liberty Call, and to everybody else, have a good day.